What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Love Unscripted Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Wilson, and this is the podcast where we have unscripted conversations with millennials about relationships and dating. So I hope you're getting a great start to your week. Hopefully you are staying consistent with your self-care routine. Hopefully you are maintaining mental clarity as you go through the week by focusing on you, by taking care of yourself, because you can't be better for your partner, for your family, for your kids if you do not take care of yourself. And I don't know who is out there, but I just feel this in my spirit. You can be the author of your own love story of your life. Like, you don't have to just let what happens in life happen to you. You can be a co-author. Now, it may take some skills. It may take some unlearning. It may take some support, but you can be the one who gets to write the ending of your story. I don't know if you're like me. I had some ups and downs in my love life and in life, period. But one thing I can say is that when I started getting the information, getting the support, and then holding myself accountable and applying what I've learned, things have been a whole lot different. And I wish and hope that you can experience the same thing at some point. But we are going to go ahead and get into it. We have another great guest who's going to be joining us today. I'm really excited. This has been a long time in the making. Okay, let me go ahead and get them in here. All right, Doc, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I'm Dr. Earl Turner. I'm a psychologist, author, professor, and media contributor. I currently provide virtual therapy through a practice called the Weight Room. So we specialize in providing services to Black and brown boys and men. And we have a group of therapists across different states, including Georgia, Virginia, Texas, New York, and California. I also host a mental health podcast called The Breakdown with Dr. Earl, and I am the founder and executive director of Therapy for Black Kids, which is an organization focused on promoting resilience and healthy development in Black youth. And we do that through a lot of different platforms, but primarily through our Instagram content and virtual events where we host and provide information to parents on healthy socialization practices and engaging in healthy coping. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So I'm curious, what made you want to shift your expertise towards helping young boys?
Yeah, so I think, for me, I started my training as a psychologist, wanted to work with children. And one of my goals that I had for a really long time was to work with children and their families. Even when I was a kid, ironically, I wanted to be a pediatrician. So that's not the route that I went. But I've always been invested in the well-being of youth. And so I think, particularly as it relates to Black youth and Black boys, that it's important for us to really give kids these tools early in life, so that way it helps them to navigate these challenges. Because I think for many of us, I grew up in a time where we didn't talk a lot about mental health in the Black community or in our home. And so I think now that so many things have changed in society, that it really is important that we talk about it and let boys in particular know that it's okay to experience a weakness in life, or to open up about your feelings and emotions. And so that's really what has driven me to talk about that particular topic.
Oh, that's great. And I too enjoy working with youth. Most of my career has been working in school-based settings or doing in-home therapy with children. And I really enjoyed it, because if you can get them those tools early, even if they had rocky starts, man, they can really change their life for the better. And some of the stories I have, I'll write a book when I'm older. It can bring tears to your eyes of how much it means to the kids, and just to see like who they can become just from having some information, having someone hear them out, and to be able to get some of those feelings that were deep down inside out. Like, being able to see that has been really great. So I'm happy that you've been able to embark on that journey. And I'm sure the young people that you work with are going to benefit greatly. So one of the things I like to ask, especially of us mental health professionals, we do a lot of talking about self-care. We encourage people to do self-care. We encourage people to have a routine. But what is Dr. Earl's self-care routine like?
Yeah, so I mean, for people who follow me on social media, they see me post. Sometimes I post my self-care. And so I definitely try to practice what I preach, and like having that routine is really important to me. So trying to do something every single day. And so I think, this can be a whole different, conversation. We can, talk for an hour about self-care, but I think, the way that it's taken off, like people think about lavish vacations and, spas and all those things, which are great, but you can't do that every single day for the average person. And so for me, it's, trying to work out as consistently as possible, engaging in walking and spending time, outdoors in nature. I love the beach, so people will see me posting, quite frequently with that. So that's a luxury of being in California. Reading sometimes when I get a chance to, I'm very busy, so I don't get a lot of time to do, reading for leisure. But that's also something that I enjoy doing. And then I also like writing, in particular, writing poetry. So that's another way for me to sort of express myself differently, outside of the academic writing that I might do.
See, grad school ruined reading for me. I used to enjoy reading, but when I was forced to read and had to read papers upon papers and articles upon articles, it took the joy out of it. Like I didn't want to pick up something and read. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you're able to find that space where even after all the education you've done, you still enjoy it. I'll do an audiobook quick. I'll listen, but the reading, ooh, I got some work to do on that. And
You gotta do
so,
what works.
but the nature thing, I definitely identify you with that. I like getting out and walking and going on hikes. And I'm still trying to get to Joshua Tree in California. So I have that on my bucket list of hiking trails to do. So hopefully I can make it out there to California. Maybe I can swing by and we can have lunch or something.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually been once, sometime I think during the pandemic. I got out there, so it's really peaceful. So if you can get a chance to do it, definitely do it.
Great, great. So let's go ahead and just dive into our topic today. And I want us to shift away from thinking about relationships for a moment. Even though we're a relationship podcast, there are still different components of us, of our being, that need to be nurtured and need to be cultivated. And one of those areas, I believe, is mental health. Now, over the recent past couple years, mental health has now been pushed to the forefront with things like the pandemic and so forth. But some of the times, I think people don't really understand fully or grasp completely what mental health is and how it impacts us. So, on the front end, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about mental health in general?
Yeah. Um, I think one of the big things for me is making sure that people understand that we all have some level of mental health. So I think like we need to focus more on the wellness piece, because I think when we talk about mental health, it automatically goes to the negativity or the struggles or the challenges in terms of how it's impacting us, our relationships or our own behavior or our motivation. And so I do think that we need to have the language to really talk about the importance of mental health or wellness, which impacts our ability to think clearly, to act in a sort of a appropriate quote unquote manner, whatever that is, and that always impacts different aspects of our life. So when we experience that mental illness or mental health difficulty or challenge, then that is when we have problems with our emotions. We may be sad, we may experience depression, which again I think it's important to talk about the difference between sadness versus depression, which can be much more debilitating. So I think those are the aspects of mental health that come up for me.
Yeah. Even I was unaware of the complexities of mental health until I got into grad school. Like
Mm,
it took me going to grad school to really understand how our mental well-being impacts everything that we do. Like it's connected to every aspect of our life. And to neglect it or not focus on the wellness piece, we have a part of our lives that could be better, that we could enhance, and that could be an asset to us rather than something that we're trying to catch up as far as trying to make it healthy again. So you did a post a couple weeks back that I thought was very impactful. I bookmarked it, I saved it, and I've been looking at it ever since. And you gave these 4 tips to managing mental health. So let's go through them and break them down a little bit more. Let's have a discussion about them. So the
Okay.
first one you said was make make a mental health plan for each day. What does that even mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Now I'm like thinking back to my post. What did I post actually? So I think for me that really means trying to be consistent. And so I talk a lot about having a self-care plan. And so I think it's really important that you identify what are these activities, tools, routines that can help you to maintain some sense of balance. So we live in a very busy, chaotic society. And so it's really helpful that you have these go-to strategies, so to speak, to help improve your mental health. And that's not to say you're not going to have some bad days, but I think even in those bad days, the strategies that you may utilize can help to maybe reduce the amount of stress that you might experience due to that bad day that you're having. So again, going back to some of the things that I talked about earlier, for me personally, trying to make sure that I start my day off with some sense of reflection. Sometimes that means reading my Bible. Sometimes it may mean just, sitting in silence, drinking my cup of coffee, which I do pretty consistently. And then other days it might mean, just not jumping up and getting straight on my emails or my phone, which I think we sometimes have a habit of doing in today's sort of technological world. So I think that really means just having a plan for you, like what are the things that you can do consistently every single day, and to have some variety so that if some days you can't do that particular thing or you're maybe not interested in doing that particular thing, that there's something else that you can sort of pull on as a way to sort of help you balance your mental health for that day.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned making a plan. And like you said, we live in a society that's very busy. Everything is quick, fast paced, and in a hurry. And I can hear somebody out there saying, well, with the kids, with my partner, and myself, like I don't have time to come up with a plan and then piece that in. How can people who have busy lives fit in a plan for their mental health?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important piece. So obviously like the planning is like you're gonna have to find some time to like sit aside and think about like what is important for me in my day. Now you may not have, in half an hour to do that. You might have like 15 minutes, but I think that's still enough time for you to be able to sit and say, okay, what do I need to do tomorrow? What do I need to do next week to sort of help me get through the week? So I like to be realistic, and this is something that I do with my clients all the time, and saying, how much time do you have and what's realistic for you to do? So in terms of thinking about your own plan, what is realistic for you in terms of one, how much time do you have to like sit and think about strategies or things that might be helpful for you? And then think about how much time do you have each day throughout the week to be able to actually dedicate to engaging in some type of, self-care practice. So that might mean you have 5 minutes. And it seems like it's a very short period of time, and I don't have kids, but I can imagine for those that are parents that they're thinking like 5 minutes is not enough time for me to sort of get to myself. But there is research that shows that even spending, as much as like 5 minutes to do a quiet activity or meditation, for example, for those that may be into that, can be helpful to improve your emotions, your mood, and even your focus. So I think really not trying to put a lot of pressure on yourself to think about you have to come up with this elaborate plan, which might actually be more stressful for some people.
Mm-hmm. And think of 5 minutes is a long time. I don't know if you've ever been on YouTube and see how long a 2-minute commercial is. That seems like forever. So imagine having 5 minutes. But I think, like you said, we got to find ways to prioritize the plan, because the plan will make things easier, smoother, and more under control for us. But we do have to take
Absolutely.
that. I read an article that said we have an extra like 4 hours that is just spent like on scrolling or viewing some leisure content on social media. So I know personally, when I was able to start cutting back on some of the scrolling, not getting caught in the loop, now I have a little bit of extra time. So think about that, you all, as you're going through your daily life. Like, what time is really spent working, helping, supporting, living versus, I'm looking at what they're doing. I'm looking at Love is Blind, figuring out what all's going on and things of that nature.
Right.
So the next tip you offered, let your feelings be known. Why is that important?
Mm. I know you said you were moving away from relationships, but I want to connect this to relationships because I think when you're in a relationship, particularly for those that have been in a longer term relationship or marriage, that you begin to make assumptions that people just sort of know how you feel or what is going to upset you or make you angry. And that's not exactly true. I mean, they may know, but you shouldn't expect people to sort of know what's going on internally with you. And so I think it's really important that you, one, just learn verbalizing what you may be experiencing. I think particularly for us as men, that sometimes for many of us, like we're taught and socialized from a very young age that it's not important or not necessary for us to talk about our feelings. And we know there's so much research and science that shows that holding all of those things in can actually be unhealthy and cause more problems for you. And so I think a really big piece of getting those emotions out is one, just making sure that you don't hold all of those emotions, stressors, difficulties inside, which could lead to more not only mental health problems, but also physical health problems. So we see increased problems with like heart disease, particularly in men, because of problems with not engaging in healthy coping practices. So I think it really is necessary to be able to sort of release that. And two, I think talking about your feelings also now helps you get the support that you need. So if you're not allowing people in to that space, they're not going to know how to support you. So I think it's sort of opening the door, so to speak, to say, hey, I'm having a bad day, I'm stressed out. And maybe you just need to verbalize that and have an ear, or you might need some other type of support. And for most people, I think in our lives that care about us, if you say something like that, they're going to be like, hey, what can I do to sort of help us support you?
Yeah, and what you touched on is really important, which I didn't realize until I got in grad school. If you don't get out your feelings and emotions, they will manifest in your body in some type of illness. That's crazy to
Absolutely.
me. If you just think about it, that your thoughts, the feeling, the connection that your body has, because you don't get it out and say it, it goes inward, and it's not a good thing because it causes things like heart disease. So for people who grew up in families or in communities where they were not allowed to speak up for themselves, what are some things they can do to start having a voice and start using their voice in a way that can be an advocate for themselves?
Yeah. I think one, just sort of shifting your own mindset, because I think it can be hard to like do something that you haven't done before. And that's another reason why I talk about the importance of socializing boys to do this at a young age, because I think there is often that expectation when, as you get older and particularly again get in relationships, that you're supposed to know how to do these things. But if you've been told all your life not to do them, what's going to make it easy for you at that moment to say, oh, now I want to sort of open up to someone in this way and sort of share my feelings. So I think it really is important for you to begin first to like shift your own mindset to say, hey, it's okay for me to do this. It's masculine for me to talk about my feelings or express, how I feel or what anxieties or sadness that I may be going through. And I think that's a really important piece of that. And then to maybe begin to actually ask people how they feel about that. Because I think that's another thing in society where you might be very in touch, quote unquote, with your feelings or be able to sort of express that. But particularly in heterosexual relationships, if your female partner is not ready or open for you to sort of be that vulnerable or to open up that deeply, then she's going to shut down. So I think being able to have those types of conversations too, to really say for the other person, whether it's a romantic relationship or not, how do you feel if I need to talk with you about something that's going on with me, that I'm stressed out about. So I think having that check-in is important too.
It's tough to say what's on the inside. Like, people sometimes make it seem like, oh, just say it. Well, there's a lot of things that I'm thinking about that could happen if I say this. I'm worried about, are we still going to be cool? Am I going to get shunned? Is my family going to exile me? Am I going to be all alone? Am I going to be misunderstood? Are my words going to be used against me? These are all things that come to mind that may make someone hesitant. So I just encourage people, when people are taking the opportunity to be vulnerable and speak up for themselves, let's be willing to really hear them out first. Like let's hear them, not just listen, because there's times where we can just listen and go in one ear and out the other, but to hear somebody is a different level of connection that you can have throughout with friends, family, co-workers. Like, work relationships can be better if you can say what you need to say and be heard. Like, it has legs. But if we're willing to hear, I think we can all be in a better place, and that our own, and we would want someone to hear us too. That's the other thing. Like, we would want to be heard. So consider that as well. Another thing you
Absolutely. Actually, you brought up this point about like workplace as well. In addition to like thinking about home environment or relationships, and I had came across an article recently looking at Black men and sort of mental health. And one of the things that sort of came up for me that you sort of touched on was like verbalizing and vocalizing and being heard is a form of social support. And really what that article and study was showing that, when there is that increased social support, it actually helps to reduce the negative effects of sort of stress in your life. And I think that's particularly important, for us to think about it. And again, especially I think as men, because oftentimes that's not seen like we need that support. We do a lot of things on our own. We might have friend groups, but it's very different than what we might see with women in terms of their friend groups. And so that social support piece and being heard, I think, is a really important piece to overall mental health and well-being.
Number 3. What is it? Oh, proactively managing stress. I think everybody could do a little bit better. What are some ways that people can proactively manage stress rather than waiting until they are at their breaking point and now need a quick fix to get them back at even keel?
Yeah. I think one of the really important pieces is knowing your body and knowing yourself. So you talked earlier about how, stress might show up, for example, in your body if you sort of hold it in. So I think sort of knowing, because for most of us, like when we begin to experience something like, stress, burnout, even getting to like depression, this didn't like happen overnight all at once, right? It sort of slowly built up to sort of lead to this problem of difficulty. And so I really do think that it's important for us to begin to like know our bodies and recognize like if we're beginning to like have problems sleeping, if we notice some sort of back pains, if we notice that, we're getting a little bit more short tempered, at work with our kids or in different spaces, that's a sign for us to let us know like, hey, something is not going right and I need to do something about that. And so I think once you learn your body and learn what those signs are, then you can be much more proactive in trying to do things to mitigate that or to reduce some of those negative impacts. So again, really building on this idea that we started the conversation about in terms of like self-care practices. Like if like, hey, it's been weeks since I've had a chance to like get that 5 minutes to myself, and you're starting to get more, irritable and short tempered, it might be time just like, okay, I need to pause whatever is going on at this moment, not watch this show on whatever streaming service that you're watching on, and take that 5 minutes, to do some meditation or whatever, to be able to sort of help yourself before you get to that sort of overwhelmed state.
Back when I was in high school, I used to ride with my friends, and one of my friends, who will not be named, every time we get in his car, one of his car lights would pop on. And then the next time we get in, it'd be the tire pressure one. Okay, tire pressure, you'll get that fixed. Next, then it'll be a check engine light. Now we're like, okay. Next, there's this little red triangle that I've never seen before on there. And next thing we know, his car's in the shop for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, having to get a whole bunch of extra work done because he did not take care of his vehicle along the way. He waited until it was at its breaking point to where the car could no longer function. We're on the side of the road trying to call a tow truck, rather than when each light comes on, addressing it, knowing those little signs. Our bodies are the same way. It gives us little signs. I've recognized that my neck right here, when I am extremely stressed, I get a knot right there. So even if I'm feeling like, oh, I'm not really that stressed, when I feel that, my ears go up. Oh, I need to start practicing more self-care. I need to go do some yoga. I need to relax. I need to schedule time to check in with myself to see, okay, what's really going on? Because my body is trying to tell me something. This is not a random occurrence. So being able to identify when your body is telling you that it's stressed, when something is not right, will allow you to be able to be proactive and come up with strategies and solutions for stress, so that you don't have to be at that point where you're taking extended time off from work. You need time away from your family, from your kids. You need to, we need to, or we should be trying to figure out ways to manage that proactively as we're going through life, rather than waiting for that one big event to occur. And the last one we're going to talk about is this positive attitude towards others. Hold on. We're talking about my mental health. How does a positive attitude towards others help you better manage your mental health?
Yeah. It reminds me of this saying around like people smiling, and there's some research I think that has looked at it too, about when you smile more, you actually feel better about life in general. So I think, for me, really recognizing that how you engage with people also impacts you. So definitely it's going to make them probably feel better, about their day as well. But sometimes people can do little things, and then that shifts like our entire mood or our entire day. And I'm one, I talk a lot with people and my friends about traffic is one of my biggest pet peeves. And I'm not going to say that I get road rage, but there are times where when people don't signal, it really irritates me. And so I think trying to like really recognize that I know that this is going to happen potentially if I allow it to, and to say, you know what, go ahead, get over in traffic, even though I know you should have signaled and got over like 50 feet down the road. But that helps me so that I don't get to that point where now I'm upset and angry, driving on the road. So I think, just sort of recognizing that how you treat people also impacts your emotional and mental health in some types of ways. And obviously, like if you're already, struggling, it's going to make it that time, 10 times worse if you have the negative sort of interactions. So I think that's a really important piece to think about as well.
Yeah, and I like the fact that even with this, we are in control of creating that environment and creating that space. Like you said, it would take me smiling at someone else to create that environment. One of the things that I do, especially when I'm training therapists and I walk in and everybody's looking like I don't want to be here today, I automatically have to say something funny or do something to change the atmosphere. I find some way to connect with people, because I personally don't like the feeling of the face looking frown. I understand it's a Monday. We don't want to be here, but we got to go through this training. But that in turn helps me be more calm as I'm presenting. I can be more in tune to what people are needing around me as I'm offering the service. But even in daily life, like I don't like being in lines at restaurants or at a coffee shop and everybody's upset. Like everybody's looking frowning. And I'm like, come on, let's smile. We're alive. You know how fortunate we are to be here getting a $7 cup of coffee. Like, do you get, like, I'll say stuff like that to change the mood and the atmosphere. And like I was saying at the beginning, we can be the co-author of our own positive vibes, as we like to say. Like we can create that. But if we don't take the time to do it or to take a step towards positivity, then those days, every day starts feeling like a Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Every day will start feeling like a Wednesday. And then you start wondering, why does everyone around me frowning? Maybe because you got a frown on your face half the day as well. Why doesn't anyone smile? maybe you haven't been the one smiling so much. So I think that that's a really good tip. Being positive towards other people, and it. I almost want to say it can be somewhat tied to. Maybe I won't say that. I just feel because when I'm thinking about, I think like, yo, I'm grateful to have positive things around me, and to have a positive attitude towards other people. I don't take that for granted. But that's just me. Maybe my mind's going somewhere else. But we're going to go
Yeah.
ahead and transition into our last segment of the show, which is Flip the Script. And that is where our guests will provide a simple tool or strategy for a challenge or an issue we may have in our current episode. So you ready for your question?
Yep, let's go for it.
All right. So someone may be out there listening and thinking like, yo, I really want to start trying to manage my mental health. I'm going to take responsibility over my mental health and wellness journey. But there are times where I'm just not feeling it. There are times where I'm not in the right mood. I'm not in the right headspace. What are some strategies or what is a tip you can offer someone who wants to be in control of their mental health? They want to start having a more mental wellness mindset, but they're just not feeling it.
Yeah. It almost is reminding me of the concept of like fake it till you make it, right? So I think there are days where you may not want to do this, whatever self-care strategy or activity is. So let's say it's something related to fitness, exercising, whether it's lifting weights or going for a walk. That if you don't want to do that, it's going to probably make it more difficult for you to enjoy that activity, right? But I can bet that if you actually do the activity, you're going to feel both physically and mentally better after it. And so one of the things that, people talk a lot about, and, particularly fitness, people and coaches, about like consistency, right? So the more that you do this thing, it becomes routine. And even though on those days where you don't want to do it, because you're consistent in this action, you just do it anyway. And so I think for people who are struggling, think about what is it, the activity or thing that you want to do. Let's say, mindfulness. If you want to do a 5-minute or less mindfulness meditation, right? Start doing it every single day. Maybe there's a certain time where you got a window. Let's say you have kids. This is the window that you have to do that activity, and just schedule to do it every single day. Whether you are feeling like doing it or feel like you need it, just do it anyway. And then just sort of notice, the differences that are in your body and your mind after engaging in that activity.
And there you have it. Dr. Turner, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Please let everybody know where they can find you on the internet and social media.
Yeah, so if you're not already connected with me on Instagram, I'm there at Dr. Earl Turner. I'm also on, I think all of my socials are Dr. Earl Turner. So if you're on there, TikTok, whatever, Threads, whatever the social media platform is, Facebook, I'm on all of those at Dr. Earl Turner. So DREARLTURNER.
All right. And I'll put all of Dr. Turner's handles down in the show notes, but please don't click them while you're driving. I know y'all listen while y'all are driving. I'm not helping you with your insurance deductible. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us this week. Please head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher Podcasts, comment, rate, subscribe. If you're in podcast land, go ahead and head on over to YouTube at Love Unscripted HD, where you can see the full video for this episode. And I just want to thank everyone who tuned in this week. And as I always say, we may not have all the answers, but we will have the conversation. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.